Look at a map of the United States. It is a familiar and beautiful thing. A patchwork quilt of 50 states stitched together. But look closer. Some patches have very strange shapes. Some states seem split in two distinct pieces. Others have long, skinny arms reaching out. You might spot a little piece of a state surrounded entirely by another. You have to ask, why? Why are they shaped that way? What story is this map trying to tell us? The lines on a map are more than ink on paper. They are the ghosts of history, the echoes of old arguments and hard-won agreements. Marks left by rivers that changed course. Marks left by mountains that stood firm. The legacy of surveyors with a compass and chain. The result of political deals in grand halls and dusty frontier towns. To understand these shapes is to understand America, people and the land. This puzzle isn't just for map lovers. State shapes affect real lives. Which school your child attends, which laws you follow, how you see yourself as a citizen. Our journey will cross the continent and go back through time. Well, let us begin. Before there were states, there was the land itself, and the land had its own boundaries. Great rivers carved their way through the continent. Towering mountain ranges rose up. Vast lakes stretched for miles. Early settlers looked to these features. A river, they reasoned, made a perfect border. A clear line, a highway for trade, a moat for defense. But nature is not as permanent as we might think. Rivers are living things. They flood, they meander. They carve new channels over decades and centuries. A great flood can change a river's course entirely. This process, known as avulsion, can leave land suddenly sitting on the other bank while the old legal border stays fixed to the original path. Along the Mississippi, borders like Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee, Missouri were set to the channel. The restless giant twisted and turned, leaving geographic orphans. A farmer in Kentucky might find his land an island of his state surrounded by Missouri, paying taxes to Kentucky, but living next to Missourians. Mountains, too, shaped our states. The Appalachians formed a barrier east to west. The crest, a watershed sending rivers opposite directions, made a logical line. This is why the North Carolina-Tennessee border follows the peaks for miles. Natural lines separated communities and defined the landscape. Physical splits that led to cultural and political ones. They really did. If nature provided the first draft of our nation's borders, then it was the surveyor who tried to write them into law. Imagine their task in the 18th and 19th centuries. Dense forests, swamps, vast unmapped plains. Their tools were primitive. A magnetic compass skewed by iron deposits, a Gunter's chain, 100 links that stretched and sagged through unforgiving terrain. Their mission, turn the words of a charter into a precise line on the ground. Small errors were inevitable. A tired surveyor might misread his compass. A chain might be stretched too far, or not far enough. Over hundreds of miles, tiny mistakes add up, and a border can drift. The Mason-Dixon line was a marvel for its time. Many other surveys were rushed, underfunded, and done in hardship. The Kentucky-Tennessee border was meant to follow 36°30' north. Teams from east and west drifted, and their lines did not connect, leaving a noticeable jog. Surveyors later drew Tennessee's straight line through a sharp Mississippi loop, cutting off the Kentucky Bend, a tiny Kentucky peninsula enveloped by river and Missouri. To reach Kentucky by road, residents go south into Tennessee, then east, then back north. It is a tiny piece of a state, split by a surveyor's line and a river's curve. It's quite remarkable. The United States was not born fully formed. It was built, piece by piece, through intense negotiations. New territories petitioned for statehood. Neighbors argued over borders. Not just lines, but power and resources. The delicate balance between free and slave states made boundaries a national flashpoint. Strange shapes are physical embodiments of political bargains to hold the nation together. Consider the Toledo Strip, claimed by Ohio and the Michigan Territory. The quarrel over Toledo's port escalated into the nearly bloodless Toledo War. To unlock Michigan's statehood, Congress compromised in 1836. Ohio got the Toledo Strip. Michigan received the remote Upper Peninsula. Many Michiganders called it worthless wilderness. But the bargain would reshape the state for the better. No event split the nation more than the Civil War. and it literally tore a state in two. Virginia was powerful, but tensions brewed between the Tidewater East and the Appalachian West. The East's slaveholding planter elite clashed with a West of small farms, coal mines, and independent-minded people with few slaves. When Virginia voted to secede in April 1861, Western delegates opposed leaving the Union. Western leaders formed their own loyal government, petitioned Congress, and with President Lincoln's support, pursued statehood. In 1863, West Virginia entered as the 35th state. The split was complete. Unlike river borders or survey errors, this line is a scar of war, a disagreement over freedom and the nation's future etched into the map. A border drawn by ideology and courage, still visible in the mountains today. If you ask a child to draw Michigan, they'll likely draw two shapes. First, the iconic Lower Peninsula, home to cities like Detroit and Grand Rapids. Then, the Upper Peninsula, the UP, to the north and west. The two parts are connected only by the 5-mile-long Mackinac Bridge, a modern marvel. The split look is rooted in a political quarrel, the Toledo Strip, a 468-square-mile prize both Michigan Territory and Ohio claimed. As Michigan prepared for statehood, the dispute escalated into the Toledo War. Militias were mustered. The standoff grew tense. President Andrew Jackson and Congress offered a solution. Ohio keeps Toledo. Michigan receives the western Upper Peninsula. Many called it a desolate, God-forsaken wilderness, fit only for Native Americans and wild beasts. But Michigan accepted, and became a state in 1837. In the 1840s, geologist Douglas Houghton confirmed vast copper. Iron ore followed. The wilderness became a mining boom, fueling America's industrial rise. Michigan's two peninsulas are a permanent reminder of a bargain that turned out better than anyone expected. Beyond clearly split states, the map is dotted with oddities, panhandles, exclaves, and enclaves. The Oklahoma Panhandle exists because slavery politics fixed the 36°-degree 30E line. Texas ceded lands north of it, creating a federal no-man's land later attached to Oklahoma in 1890. Florida's panhandle reflects colonial rivalries of Spain, France, and Britain. West Florida remnants later joined to East Florida. West Virginia and Idaho's panhandles are corridors left after neighbors drew their lines, leaving narrow scraps. Point Roberts was created when the U.S. and Britain drew the 49th parallel straight across in 1846, slicing a peninsula tip. To reach it by land from Washington, you drive through Canada, a unique community made by a single straight line. Americans in Point Roberts live daily across a border, proof that tiny map quirks shape real lives. West of the Mississippi, the map's character changes. Jagged borders give way to straight lines and right angles. States look ruler-drawn, and they were. A rational plan to survey and sell a vast public domain, the Public Land Survey System, born of the Land Ordinance of 1785. Surveyors set meridians and baselines, carving 6-by-6-mile townships, then 36 one-mile sections, turning wilderness into parcels. Congress often used the grid to define new states by latitude and longitude. Simple, convenient, geometric. Colorado and Wyoming are almost perfect rectangles. Borders slice through rivers and mountains. The grid overruled the land. The Four Corners is a pure survey creation. Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah meeting at a single point that draws tourists from around the world. The straight lines of the West tell of a nation confident enough to impose order, creating a landscape defined by the logic of the grid. And so, we arrive back at our map. But we see it now with new eyes. The strange shapes, the split states, the peculiar panhandles are not random curiosities. We can see them as a rich history book written in the language of geography. Each border tells a story. It speaks of a river that changed its mind, a mountain that stood its ground, a surveyor who struggled with an imperfect compass. Each line records choices made long ago, threads of nature, human error, and the vibrant, tangled thread of politics. compromises in Congress, bargains over resources, and a civil war that split a state in two. These lines define communities, influence economies, and forge identities, from Michigan's UP under the bridge to residents of the Kentucky Bend. Next time you look at a map, look for the stories, zigzags that follow rivers, straight lines that cross mountains, and the grid imposed upon wild land. In its splits and odd shapes, we can read how America became America.